Hi, my name's Noah, and at my sister Lena's wedding, they sat me alone, by the door, at a two-top with no name card, near the exit like an afterthought they couldn't quite leave off the guest list. While others clinked glasses of champagne and nibbled caviar, I was served cold leftovers, both literally and symbolically. Lena even had the nerve to lean in with a saccharine smile and whisper, "You should feel honored." But it wasn't just the food. It was years of being invisible. Years of my work sabotaged. My photography exhibitions conveniently lost. My images uncredited. Years of pretending the spotlight they basked in had anything to do with love for me, until the moment I stopped being useful. They dressed me in silence and shame, and I wore it, until now. So when Lena messaged, "Can you shoot my wedding?" Of course, for free. Your family. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't see it, but because I finally did. The entitlement, the expectation, the demand wrapped in a favor. Then Mom called, her voice sticky sweet, all veiled obligation. "You do understand what family means, don't you? After everything we've done for you, this is the least you can do." She hung up before I could respond. Maybe she never meant for me to, but I went to the wedding. Alone, of course. No date, no +1, just a navy dress, and the quiet armor of every woman who spent her life being edited out of the frame. The venue was a dream. White roses, golden drapery, petals floating like confetti caught mid-breath. Too perfect, too staged, like everything Lena touched. At check-in, the woman with the clipboard paused when she saw my name. "Table 17, she said after a quick flip through the list, pointing to the back, a tiny table near the doors, hidden behind a floral partition. No one welcomed me. No one looked up. I took my seat in the shadows, where I was expected to stay. And I remembered her 25th birthday. I'd flown in from a shoot in Chicago, sacrificing deadlines and a major client to make it in time. I gifted her a signed limited edition art print from her college idol. She never unwrapped it. That night, her boyfriend gave her a Cartier bracelet, and suddenly I didn't exist. It was always like that. Until I wasn't useful. Until I was forgotten. Why did I even come? Maybe it was old programming. Maybe a final flickering hope that something might change. But it hadn't. Lena, glowing in her bridal robe, walked by me. Her eyes met mine, then slid right past, as if I weren't there. My phone buzzed. A client approving a cover shoot. My work, my name, front and center in a national magazine. The image had light and shadow and meaning, and I realized then, I didn't come for them. I came for me. To finally see the truth. To let the camera turn, just this once, and capture what they'd always missed. Me, no longer invisible. Me, no longer silent. Me, telling my story, not through their lens, but through mine. It was supposed to be a milestone in my career, a moment of pride. But instead, I sat alone at a forgotten table near the exit, not even listed on the seating chart, because they hadn't forgotten me. They had intentionally excluded me. When the food began to arrive, the message became undeniable. Waiters glided through the ballroom like performers in a choreographed ballet, delivering edible luxury under glittering chandeliers, foie gras glistening beneath berry glaze, lobster bisque in porcelain bowls, risotto laced with truffle. Each dish a celebration, each guest bathed in praise. And at my table? A waiter dropped a plate without meeting my gaze. Half a cold dinner roll and a pile of wilted greens tossed without care. No dressing, no fork, just insult, served cold. I stared at it as laughter echoed from nearby tables, their glances sharpening like blades. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. A calculated decision to remind me where I stood in this family. on the edge, invisible, irrelevant. I'd spent years excusing their neglect as ignorance, not malice. But this was theatrical cruelty dressed in elegance. Lena appeared then, her shadow falling across my table like a smudge. "Hope everything's okay over here," she cooed, smiling with champagne-laced sweetness. Dressed in white like a holy icon, she leaned in, voice honeyed with venom. "We kept it simple for you. Didn't want to overwhelm. I know you're used to more laid-back stuff." My fingers curled around the edge of the table. She tilted her head. "Smile for the camera, sis. Wouldn't want to ruin the aesthetic." And just like that, she turned, heels clicking a smug rhythm across the ballroom as if she hadn't just carved another notch into my spine. I sat in the rising silence, the scent of rosemary and champagne curdling in my throat. I had no appetite. Not for the food, not for her performance, and certainly not for the lie that this was anything but orchestrated exclusion. My mind drifted, uninvited, back to Thanksgiving 2018. I had stayed up all night crafting a peach pie from scratch, battled traffic for hours, and arrived proud, hopeful. I offered the pie to Mom, who didn't even look up. "Store-bought crust?" she asked, voice flat. "No," I said. "It's homemade." She shrugged, turned away, and lit up only when Lena entered with an Instagram photo captioned, "Queen Evelyn." "Now that's thoughtful," Mom beamed. My pie remained untouched. That day, I smiled through it, told myself I was being too sensitive. But here, tonight, I could finally see clearly. They didn't overlook me. They saw me, and chose to diminish me anyway. Across the ballroom, someone began giving a toast, but the words didn't reach me. My fingers slid into my purse and brushed the smooth edge of the USB drive hidden in the lining. A soft heat radiated from it, pulsing like a heartbeat. No, I hadn't come to ruin the wedding, but I hadn't come to sit quietly either. I hadn't come to swallow scraps while they feasted. Not anymore. They had no idea I'd brought something to the wedding far more potent than any gift. Something sharp and silent, coiled in silver inside my clutch. The moment came quietly. A man at the next table dropped his phone, and as he stooped to grab it, Lena's screen lit up beside mine, unguarded for just a second. I hadn't planned to look, but fate has a twisted sense of humor. One message glowed through the glittering facade of her perfect day. "Can't wait till tonight. Just remember, you're mine. Wedding or not. Dane, her lover. Not a memory from before, not a mistake made in youthful ignorance. Number she was cheating. Today." The sheer arrogance of it scorched through me. She was draped on Julian's arm like a dream, smiling into selfies with his mother, swaying gently to music like she believed her own fairy tale. But now I knew the truth. And suddenly, every cruel slight, every cold shoulder, every moment they'd made me feel invisible, had purpose. I wasn't just forgotten. I was camouflage. I was the shadow they used to sharpen their own spotlight. I walked away from the table, heels muffled against marble as I disappeared into the hallway, my breath catching against the cool plaster wall. But solitude didn't offer peace. It summoned ghosts. Berlin. 3 years ago. My breakthrough. My first major solo exhibition was about to launch when, without warning, it collapsed. No explanation. Just a generic email from the gallery. "Best of luck." I unraveled. Months later, a mentor whispered the truth. Someone influential had made calls, warning I was unstable, unmarketable, a risk. She didn't have to say who. Dad never valued art, never cared to understand mine. But sabotage? I hadn't believed he'd go that far. And yet, somehow I had. That was the betrayal that hurt most. not his action, my silence, my endless, naive hope. I returned to the ballroom, drifting back to my exile at table 17. Around me, the toasts rolled on, each one a performance, each laugh another rehearsal in their endless play. I stared ahead, numb, until my phone buzzed. An email. Congratulations, Noah. Your portrait series has been selected for the spring cover of National Photo Journal. Exceptional work. My first cover. The kind of news that earns champagne toasts, celebratory dinners, pride. But not here. Here. I knew the script. Mom would call it luck. Dad would scoff. Lena might repost it with a filter and tag herself in the story. I locked the screen. My moment didn't belong to them. I reached into my clutch. The USB drive was cold against my skin, like it knew the weight of what it carried. Inside it, pictures, evidence, not just today's betrayal, but years of truth. Lena's late-night messages, Dad's voice on a call he thought I'd never hear, all of it. I felt the line inside me draw clear, not from fury, not even from pain, but from knowing. Clean. Final. They had dressed me in silence for decades, called me background, said I owed them everything, but I wasn't the frame, I was the lens, and she wore white. But I held the truth, and this time, the background was done being silent. My truth, bruised, buried, but burning, was finally louder than the silence they'd dressed me in for decades. Near the restroom, under dim lights and crystal sconces, Evelyn intercepted me with surgical precision. Her lipstick was flawless, her tone more dangerous than any raised voice. "Noah, darling," she cooed, smiling like a queen greeting peasants. "Let's not ruin the evening." Her grip was soft but sharp, nails grazing my arm as she leaned in close, perfume and poison clinging to every breath. "If you say or show anything tonight," she whispered, "consider your career done. One phone call ended it before. I'll make 10 this time." The threat came dressed in pearls and politeness, sealed with the clack of her designer heels fading down the hall. I didn't follow. I stood still, my heart pounding in my ears, breath scraping against the tile walls. She didn't scream. She sliced. And like always, she expected me to bleed quietly. But this time I wasn't here to be their scapegoat. I wasn't here to smile and stay small. I was here to be seen. My mind wandered back 6 years, to the gallery in Manhattan, the one I'd canceled when Evelyn called, guilt-laced and demanding. "Family portraits," she'd said. "Grandma's in town. This matters more than some pictures on a wall." I caved. I missed my first solo show. The gallery replaced me. Grandma hated the photos. Evelyn never said thank you. That was the moment I learned. Love in our family was conditional, transactional, and laced with resentment if you dared to dream beyond their blueprint. And now, back at table 17, I stared at the USB in my clutch, still cool and solid in my hand. Evelyn's voice echoed, "You owe us." I curled my fingers tighter around it. "No," I whispered. "You owe me." Around me, the ballroom swelled with polite laughter, champagne, false perfection. Lena sparkled on stage, lies sewn into the seams of her designer gown. Dad chuckled beside her, always louder than the truth. Evelyn played the gracious matriarch, bowing to guests like a curated statue. But I wasn't here to bow. Not anymore. A waiter asked if I was all right. "I will be," I said, and meant it. I didn't move. I didn't waver. I watched Lena, the star of the show, my work behind her, beneath her, erasing me. Just like 3 weeks ago, when the email came. A woman from LA, a gallery contact from years ago, messaged me with a screenshot from Lena's press kit. "Hey," she wrote, "isn't this your Venice boardwalk shot?" No credit line, though. My photo, my lens, my golden hour lighting. Lena, front and center, laughing in a white dress. My art repurposed into her brand. No mention, no permission, no apology. Just theft, masked as inspiration. But I'd seen it before. 2 years ago, I confronted her, held up her latest spread, asked calmly for basic credit. "Relax, Noah," she'd said, flipping her hair. "It's just a photo. People care about the model, not the background." She never understood what she was saying. But I did. She meant me. I was just the background, the shadow, the lens that made everyone else look better. But the lens had changed. And tonight, so would the story. Because tonight, the background was done being ignored. Tonight, the background had teeth. That word, background, clung to me like mildew, seeping into every corner of my being, every interaction at this wedding. Every glance passed over me like I was part of the decor, not the family. I wasn't their sister. I was a prop, an accessory to their curated lives, useful only when framing their perfect moments. And yet it was me who captured them all, who created their images, who saw them fully through my lens even when they refused to see me. Tonight I sat quietly at table 17. The USB nestled in my clutch beside a lip balm and a folded tissue. The orchestra played something light and regal, like a soundtrack to a fairy tale no one realized was about to fracture. I stood, steady now, and walked toward the AV booth, where the MC was reviewing the schedule. "There's one more story the guests need to see before the final speech," I said. He blinked, unsure. I don't think that's—" "It is now," I cut in, voice low but firm. "You can cue it or I will." After a brief glance toward the stage manager, he nodded, and I handed over the USB. As he passed it to the tech crew, I turned back to the ballroom, a sea of glittering faces pretending all was perfectly orchestrated, unaware that the wires beneath them were already unraveling. I returned to my table, sat, adjusted the silverware I had no intention of using. Across the room, I saw Mom whisper to Dad. Lena chatted with a bridesmaid, glowing, blissfully unaware. Then the lights flickered, the screen lowered. Confusion rippled like a breeze through silk. Murmurs rose. Guests glanced around. I folded my hands in my lap. This isn't revenge. It's release. The first frame appeared. Lena's face blanched. Gasps fractured the air. The video opened with a glossy shot from her engagement party. Lena clinging to Julian's arm, smiling for cameras. Seconds later, a clip showed her stepping away, texting. The message appeared. "Dane. Can't wait till tonight. Just remember, you're mine. Wedding or not. Time-stamped. Dated. Undeniable." Her jaw dropped. Julian froze. Then, slowly, he turned to face her. I didn't need to be near them to feel the heat of his devastation. He wasn't the groom. He was the decoy. The screen shifted to my voice. Clear, deliberate. They dressed me in silence. I returned the favor with clarity. Clip after clip cut deep. Evelyn tossing my homemade Thanksgiving pie into the trash. "Next time, buy from Whole Foods." A voicemail. "We'll reschedule your show. Grandma's in town. You know how fragile she is." But the show was never rescheduled. The slot was given away. Then my father's voice in a call recording. "She's talented, but volatile. Not someone we'd trust to carry a brand. Her work's emotional, not marketable." It was unmistakably him. Another clip. Lena on a rooftop at a launch party, swirling wine. "She's so dramatic. Art's cute, but we're the ones with real jobs. Real lives, right?" Laughter. Then the final blow. A close-up of the wedding seating chart. Table 17. One chair. No name. The room inhaled as if to hold its breath. I didn't move. I let the silence speak. and across the ballroom Julian rose to his feet, mouth parted but no words came. He turned to Lena, his voice barely a whisper. "Did you ever love me?" But the question landed like a blade. She reached for him, mascara cracking, desperation painted across her perfect face. Wait!" she cried, but he stepped back, then again. And just like that, Julian was gone. The Winston matriarch stood, spine straight, voice glacial. "You tried to attach us to this disgrace?" she hissed without waiting for a reply. Her husband followed her lead, silent and seething. Evelyn fumbled to stand, sputtering something about misrepresentation, but Walter didn't move. He stared down at the linen tablecloth as if it had betrayed him too. I walked to the microphone uninvited, steady as glass. No smile, no hesitation. "You called me dramatic, difficult, disposable. But I was just inconvenient," I said, my voice cutting clean through the stunned silence. "To everyone who watched and said nothing, congratulations. You no longer get to pretend. You saw it, you heard it, and you'll carry it now." I scanned the room, guests with lowered eyes, not ashamed but exposed. You dressed me in silence. Tonight I wear my own voice. Then I stepped back. One clap, two, then a ripple. Not thunderous, not performative, but real. As I turned from the stage, Jess's voice reached me, small and frantic. "What did you do to me?" I didn't turn. "I stopped letting you do it to me," I answered. "Because people like Lena don't fall quietly. They unravel in slow, chaotic silence." Julian stood once more, not with rage or confusion, but with a finality that sucked the air from the room. He slipped his ring off and placed it on the edge of the table. "You don't even understand love," he said. "Just performance. No yelling, no spectacle. Just the quiet devastation of truth." Jess reached for him, but he was already gone. The Winstons followed, their exits polished and devastating. "This family has no honor," the matriarch declared, her pearls stiff around her neck. "We will not be associated with this." And then they disappeared into the night. Guests began to murmur, some in shock, others in subtle approval, before coats were gathered and the dance floor emptied. Lena slumped into a chair, her perfect dress crumpled and ruined, her cheeks streaked with the remnants of glamour. She didn't speak. She just sat in the wreckage of the story she tried to control. Then came the messages. My phone lit up. A brand rep. "Due to recent developments, the skincare campaign is canceled." Another. "Pending content paused. Too much exposure. Bad kind." Then her publicist, blunt and unfiltered. "Lena, you're radioactive. Go dark." Now I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. It wasn't a win. It was gravity. Truth, when it lands, doesn't need applause. I stepped into a hallway to breathe, but Evelyn was waiting. She blocked my path, drink in hand, her fury trembling beneath smeared mascara. "You humiliated us," she hissed. "You humiliated your sister. Is this what you wanted? To destroy your family?" "No," I replied, my voice even. "I just wanted to be treated like your daughter." Her eyes narrowed, full of venom. "You always make everything about you." But then, from behind her, Walter's voice broke through, quiet, but firm. "Enough." He stepped forward, voice quiet but anchored in truth. "This family broke a long time ago, Evelyn. Noah just stopped pretending." She stared at him, stunned, as if seeing a stranger in the man she married. So did I. And yet, for the first time, Walter looked fully human, not like a patriarch guarding his legacy, but a man finally releasing a lie. Evelyn didn't speak again. She turned without ceremony, left her drink abandoned on a nearby table, and walked out of her own daughter's wedding. Around us, the air changed. Guests trickled out, some with nods of sympathy, others with awkward glances, all of them carrying the story on their lips like a confession. I returned to table 17. The USB lay beneath a napkin, emptied of its burden, stripped of its threat. I held it loosely in my hand and felt a strange weightlessness. Not victory, not pride, just freedom. Around the room, the pieces of a false legacy lay in silence. Lena collapsed in her chair like a stringless marionette. Walter stood alone, arms folded, staring into a future he no longer controlled. I hadn't won. I had simply ended the performance. The next morning, my phone rang. My mother. Not with regret, but with fear. Her voice came thin, hollow, trying to mask the cracks. "I think we all said things we didn't mean." I said nothing. "Can we meet? Talk?" I recognized the tone. Not remorse. Containment. She didn't want reconciliation. She wanted control over the damage. "I've already said what I needed to, publicly," I replied. There was a pause, then softer. "Walter and we've reflected. We want to move forward as a family." I didn't flinch. "Your version of family isn't something I need anymore." I hung up. A few days later, a letter arrived. My father's handwriting, rigid and measured. Not an apology, just, "We hope someday you'll understand what we tried to do." That was the last I heard from them, and that was enough. I didn't need their mended bridges. I needed no bridges at all. But closure has a way of knocking again. A month later, on a gray Tuesday soaked in rain, Lena showed up at my studio door. Makeup free, soaked to the elbows, jacket clinging to her like resignation. "I'm not here to explain," she said. "Good," I replied. "I just need work." I stood in the doorway for a long time, studying her. No designer heels, no performance in her voice, just raw, uncertain humanity. "You could have called first," I said. "I didn't think you'd answer." Fair. I let her in. The studio smelled like paint and varnish, soft jazz playing in the background. My assistant Ezra edited prints in the back. Lena lingered in the gallery space, surrounded by portraits of strangers who had shown me more trust than she ever had. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "I just need to start somewhere." I believed her. Not fully, but enough. I paused. "You'll show up early. You'll clean. You'll be invisible for a while." She nodded quietly. "And this time you'll earn your place in the frame." That night, I stepped onto the studio rooftop. The Brooklyn skyline blinked in quiet rhythm, the city pulsing like a heartbeat I'd finally made peace with. Ezra joined me, tea in hand. "So," he asked, "what's your next project?" I looked out at the lights stretching far beyond the broken pieces of my past. The wind tugged at my sleeves, gentle but persistent. "Portraits of rebirth," I said, "but not from ashes, from clarity." And in that clarity, I stood, wounds not gone, but no longer ruling me, while spring whispered softly between the buildings, finally deciding it was time to stay. In my hand was an old photo I hadn't touched in years. Me and Lena, ages 10 and 12. She stood front and center in a pristine white ballet costume, curls perfect, posture flawless. The star. I was a blur in the background, shoulder half cropped out, smiling like I wasn't supposed to exist in the frame. I traced the edge with my thumb, remembering how often I'd been out of focus in their story. They never saw me clearly, but I do now. Inside the studio, Ezra mumbled something about a crooked frame, the sound of tape pulling, a gentle thump as a print shifted into place. "Hey, Noah," he called. "This one's a little off, but I think it's honest." I laughed. "Good. Leave it that way." Guests had started to arrive for opening night of my new series, Reborn in Focus. Some were collectors, others friends, but all of them were chosen. Mira passed around lemon cookies and glasses of sparkling water. Music hummed in the background, soft and steady, like breath. In the center of the gallery, someone lifted a glass. "To the family you make," they said, and the toast echoed across the room. Glasses clinked, smiles bloomed. I stood in the center of the frame this time, not because I begged for a place, but because they saw me and made room. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Lena. She was quietly sweeping near the back corner, invisible to the guests. She didn't look up. She didn't expect praise. And, more importantly, she didn't run. Later, when silence returned like an old friend and the last guest had left, I checked my phone. One new voicemail. "Noah, it's your mother. I know you don't owe us anything, but I hope someday you'll forgive me." Not for me. For you. I didn't delete it, but I didn't call back either. Some things aren't meant to be repaired, just remembered, then released. I stepped into my private workspace in the back, the faint scent of varnish and steel grounding me. My favorite chair groaned as I sank into it. On the wall across from me hung a new photograph, black and white, sharp and raw. My own face, bold and unapologetic. Below it, handwritten in ink, "Truth," framed by my own hands. No more asking to be seen. No more waiting for an invitation. I built the table. Maybe you've seen a piece of yourself in my story. Maybe you've spent years shrinking in the background of someone else's spotlight, waiting for a seat, waiting to be enough. But here's what I've learned. After walking through silence, shame, and survival, you don't need their permission to matter. You don't have to keep bleeding just because they call it family. And you sure as hell don't need to sit at a table where your name isn't even written down. You can build your own. I did. Not out of vengeance, but out of truth, out of clarity, out of that quiet kind of self-love we give ourselves when no one else offers it. So I'll ask you this. What truth have you been swallowing for too long? What story is still lodged in your throat, waiting to be told? If this story stirred something in you, drop a 1 in the comments, or let me know where you're watching from. And if it didn't land, that's okay too. Share your thoughts. This space is for real people and real stories. If you believe in truth, healing, and endings that don't need closure but offer freedom, subscribe. Take care of your story. It matters. You matter.